Welcome to episode 222 of the Whatnots Review Show, where every week we pick a story and we talk about it. This could be a movie, a TV series, anime, manga, comic book, audio drama, all kinds of entertainment. We watch it, read it, listen to it, and then we come back here and we discuss it. My name is Melissa Wilkinson, and I am joined as always by Kyle Springer.
Hello, Melissa. How was your morning?
It's been okay. I had a big night out last night.
Oh, did you guys, did you, because I know you mentioned you were at a birthday party. Shout out to fan of this show, Jack.
Friend of the show. Previous
Jack.
Guest, Jack. Yeah, it was Jack's birthday, and she wanted to go out to a karaoke lounge.
That's cool.
This place was fancy.
Nice.
It was very fancy. And you could search through their catalog of like literal karaoke tracks, but you could also search YouTube, which was a terrific boon. I got to do the Wendy's hot drinks song, which was the only thing I wanted to do sincerely. Like everything else was some sort of a bit, but it's like, no, I like that song really calls to my heart more than any real song that's not about teaching you how to make a hot coffee. I just want to do hot drinks. Thanks.
Good stuff. I had a good weekend. My girlfriend and I finished watching Lost. It was her first time, my like sixth or seventh time, because it's one of my favorite shows. So it's been an emotional weekend. Lots of laughing and crying and discussing Lost. It's been a good time.
What a special time in a person's life to see the series finale of Lost.
She's a woman now.
After you watch the series finale of Lost, you suddenly hear pomp and circumstance, and then you're handed a diploma.
Right, yeah. Congratulations. Now get out there in the world.
Right. Go out and spread the word that the island was never purgatory. Make sure people know that.
Yes, they answered the polar bear question in season 3, if you're paying attention. Stuff like that. Yeah, it was good. It's been a good weekend for sure. And then D23 was also this weekend too.
Yeah. So. Very exciting. That panel was earlier than I thought it was yesterday. So I had time to like watch the new rock stars live stream of them covering all the news as it came out. I had time to learn everything before I went out for the night. So got to go out on the town having seen the Werewolf by Night trailer. Felt good.
Good stuff. We will have reactions to some of those trailers up on our YouTube channel as well. So be on the lookout for all of that. But Melissa, what are we here to talk about this week?
We continue Shametember. This is part 2 of Shametember. Every year, you and I each get a week to pitch each other movies that are on our list of shame that we've never seen.
Yeah.
These could be huge cultural touchstones or very specific things to us. I think my first Shametember was I love the Daniel Craig James Bond movies, but I've never seen Dr. No. It could be anything. And this week, my Shametember was I have never seen all of Titanic, and you hadn't either.
I hadn't either. Kind of wild, because last week we talked about the Godfather trilogy. That one had been on my list, and you happen to haven't seen that. You had not seen that one either. And it worked out this week that we also both hadn't seen the one for this week, Titanic. I always have this like vivid memory of the house that I lived in growing up. In our basement, we had one of those bookshelf. I mean, kind of like these cube organizer, like bookshelf things that I had, but those really tall ones, those like single column, like real tall ones. With all of our movies on it, all our DVDs, all that stuff. And I remember our 2-part cassette, like 2-part VHS of the Titanic sitting right next to our 2-parter of Ben-Hur, and right, like our 2-parter of I don't know who knows what, but just like for some reason, that is a memory that sticks out in my head that we had the VHS, and it was a 2-part VHS.
VHS is.
Yes. Yeah.
V's HS.
But yeah, I'm not surprised I haven't seen it, but also kind of am. Just with how big of a cultural touchstone this is, and it's one of those things of just how have I gone this far in life without having seen this before? So here we are. I finally watched it. Finally got to see it, and it was good. I enjoyed it.
It is good.
Yeah.
There's a reason why it won like 11 Oscars. Titanic is a very solid piece of filmmaking.
It is very
this
good.
This has always been on my list of shame, because I remember we had like the 2 VHS tapes that I think like an aunt brought over. Or maybe they were rented from Blockbuster. They were like those 2 clamshells that were like rubber banded together in the middle. It was like 98. It would have been when it was out on home video already. And we started watching it. I think me, my mom, my little brother, and like an aunt. And I chickened out at the flooding scenes. Somewhere when Leonardo DiCaprio was handcuffed in that little room and the water's rising, I couldn't take it anymore. I was like, Mom, can you turn it off? Can we watch something else? Can I watch Rugrats or whatever? And I never did that. I was not like a scaredy cat kid. Stuff like that usually didn't intimidate me or frighten me. So this has always been the one movie that I was too scared to finish. And it took me ages to come back around to it in my adult life. I wanted to. By the time I was like 13, I was like, what was I doing? I got to go back and finish that movie. But it took until now on our 3rd annual Shametember for me to be like, this has got to be the year. I can go no farther in my adult life, having not seen all of Titanic. Even though I know how Titanic ends. We all know how Titanic ends, famously.
If you have a sinking feeling watching this movie, like you're not alone. No, like that's interesting though, that like at a younger age you were scared to finish the movie. I'm wondering if it's not like a fantasy film. Like there's not like fantasy action where like things are like, which is maybe more palatable because it's fake, it's like not real. Whereas this, it does have some CGI or like models, like scaled, like shot, but like it's all like realistic. It's all like, hey,
very
this
practical
can happen. It was practical. Yeah, it did happen. Right. So that, like, I wonder if something like that got in your head.
I think like more realistic things scared me. Like when I was a little kid, when I was a baby, I loved The Crypt Keeper. My older brother says these are like, that was the first like TV thing I latched onto when I'm like a year and a half old, and he's watching Tales from the Crypt. I love that weird skeleton man, but I was terrified of Freddy Krueger. I think because I could tell like this man caught on fire, and any of us could catch on fire.
Sure.
Like anything that could be a real world threat in some way. Like I knew I wasn't going to get knives for hands, but I'm like, I could be in a house fire or something and I could look like him. Yeah. I could be on a boat and the boat gets too wet and I drown. Like anything that theoretically could happen to me, that spooked me.
Too much of a good thing is a bad thing. Fire, good thing. Too much of it, bad thing.
Right, water, I was scared of too
much water, bad thing.
Right, scared of too much water, too much fire. Yeah, fantastical things I could always take. You know, I loved X-Files as a kid. I liked the spookier stuff.
Interesting.
This was the one thing, and now I've conquered it. I have seen all of Titanic, all like 3 hours and 7 minutes.
Well, congratulations, Melissa, on conquering your fear.
Mm-hmm.
Good stuff. Yeah, Titanic. Titanic, I guess for any of you who don't know or haven't seen the movie like we hadn't, this is inspired by real events. Of course, there was a real ship by the name of Titanic that did sink. I'm not sure all the stats of like how many actual people did die and how many survived and all that stuff, but it was a pretty significant event. And this is James Cameron's 1997 magnum opus on this event here. It's like a 3-hour and 20-minute long movie. You guys, I'm sure, know all the memes, all the jokes, all the lines. That's something that at least I had absorbed through cultural osmosis. But yeah, I mean, it's something. Go ahead.
Something I want to remark on is that the imagery and the lines that people know from this movie come from throughout its very long runtime. Yeah. And when we watched The Godfather, we realized all the things we knew were from like the first hour of the first movie.
One. Yeah. With
I think
very
it's interesting
few exception.
Yeah. So much of this movie throughout all of it has pervaded culture. It's not just like the first hour and then people got bored and wandered away and they don't know what happens anymore. Everybody knows all of this movie entirely.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's a pretty straightforward film about the ship taking off and then hitting an iceberg and sinking. But yeah, it is considered a classic. It is a masterpiece. It is the classic of just like, I just want to watch a train wreck as it happened. Like, this is that movie. It is a shipwreck waiting to happen, and then it happens, and it happens for an hour and a half. And it is enthralling. It is just, you want to watch every single second to be like, what is happening? It's a fantastic one. For sure.
It's successful at being so many different genres. We've got this really beautiful romance at the heart of the thing that I think is well done, but if the romance is too hokey for you, if you're just not the sort of viewer who latches onto a romance, then you've got the real historical detail. You've got the disaster movie, just the spectacle of this massive ship and what it is in the narrative and what it is in filmmaking. Just to look at this movie and see how much effort was put into it. It's remarkable.
Yeah.
How it does feel like it's really immersive. You are in that space, but also you can step outside of it. You're thinking about both the real people in the water and the actors in the water, like at equal weight in your mind, and you're just marveling at all of it. This is such a unique film experience. I don't know if there's anything else that is like, there's other movies that have given us the romance, the spectacle, the sweeping grandeur of the thing, or the terror, the disaster. But I don't know if there's any other movie that has this exact formula of every different emotion that goes into it.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a wild one for sure. I think I read on the Wikipedia that the budget, it was like at the time it was the most expensive film made. And at one point, I think they had calculated that it was like $1 million per minute of footage in that, which is kind of wild. But like, yeah, the detail is absolutely there. And there is some CGI reconstructions of the ship that they use in this, but like we said, most of this is practical or made to look like it is very, very realistic. There is no big special effects shots. You know, you don't need to have Iron Man flying around or doing all of that stuff. But yeah, just the way they shot this with these real practical effects was neat, and it is a spectacle to watch this whole thing. So if you haven't seen it, go check it out. I recommend it.
Absolutely. I watched it on Prime. Go to your aunt's house and see if she still has 2 VHS tapes. I wish I could have watched it in that format because, like, I don't know when the break point is. I don't know when your intermission is. I was trying to figure out when it would have been. I don't know if I exactly nailed it down.
Interesting. What's really funny about you and I watching this movie right now is that of course there are memes and jokes out there about Leonardo DiCaprio not dating anyone older than the age of 25. We are at the 25th anniversary, or it will be like real soon here. I think the 25th anniversary of Titanic, and so there have been memes floating out there of like people interviewing DiCaprio being like, so what was your favorite thing about filming Titanic? And he will be like, what movie was that? Oh no, I wasn't in a movie called Titanic because it's the 25th anniversary. So he's done. Moving on. So I don't know if I have much else to say for
what
like,
can be said.
Spoiler for free stuff. I mean, you guys kind of already know the spoilers.
Difficult to spoil the film.
Yeah.
we all know historically and in terms of the pop culture of the main fictionalized characters in the narrative, we know what happens to everybody.
Yeah, indeed. Well, go check it out. But right now, we will take a quick break for some housekeeping. And when we return, we will get into spoilers and start discussing the film more in depth. So we will be right back. We put a lot of hard work into the shows that we make. And yes, we make multiple different shows here at The Whatnots. And we'd love it if you check them all out. You can find out more information on our website at thewhatnots.com, as well as your favorite podcasting platform of choice. When you type in The Whatnots, all of our shows will pop up right there. Just don't forget to give us a nice rating and review if you like the shows. If you want to support what we do here at The Whatnots, patreon.com/thewhatnots is the best place to do that. You can support us for as little as $1 a month. You can get all kinds of exclusive content at the $3 tier. You can also get a shout out and a thank you on all of our shows at the $5 tier. You can support us on Twitch by subscribing to our channel at twitch.tv/thewhatnots, and we would love to have you all join us for our live streams and talk with us in the chat. And lastly, we have merch. If you'd like to grab yourself a shirt or a sweatshirt or a mug or something else, go to thewhatnots.com/store to pick up some merch today. All right, and we are back. A big shout out to all of our Patreon supporters. We love you and appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank
it means
you.
A lot. Cool things that we have been up to here at The Whatnots. Like we mentioned before last week here on the review show, we covered the Godfather trilogy. That was a lot of fun. That was our first week of Shametember for 2022. And so here we are for part 2 of that to watch Titanic, which Melissa, you kind of dubbed as the Godfather for women.
As approximately close, you know, these men's movies and women's movies being very, very broad, stereotypical, outdated concepts, but still, it was on my mind this Shametember that was sort of a theme we ran into. I'm like, what is the chick flick equivalent of The Godfather? As close as I could get it. Is it Titanic?
Good stuff. Good stuff. On the captain's log, man, this past week we had some whiplash of all the content that we had on the podcast. The Queen of England passed away. We had some updates for some new Mountain Dew flavors that we had can talk
As
about.
there is death, there is also birth.
We got to make some final predictions for D23. All sorts of stuff. We had a great time. And then keep your eyes peeled because at the end of the month here in September, I guess this next week is that right? No,
we've got one more week of regular pitches, and then yes, the final week in September, we're going to start our new monthly ongoing series, and we're going to be reading a comic you found, Kyle, called Kaiju Max.
Yes, so keep your eyes out for that, because I'm super excited. I've been trying to get more kaiju content here on the review show in 2022. So I think my mission has been a success. But for the captain's log at the end of the month, keep your eyes peeled, because we are going to do a fantasy draft of so far we've been planning like best TV show opening credits of that stuff. It's subject to change if we want to, but that's the one we planned. We're hoping to have some guests join us on the show for that, but that should be a lot of fun. So go check that out when it's out. And then, last but not least, like I said at the start here, D23 is happening this weekend. All sorts of new trailers and announcements and stuff like that. So we will have some trailer reactions up on our YouTube page as well. We finally got Werewolf by Night confirmed, and a trailer dropped. We got our first trailer for Secret Invasion, which is super exciting. And then recently here on the review show, we covered National Treasure for the 4th of July weekend. We also got our first trailer to the Disney Plus show of National Treasure. So I'm excited about that one as well. But that is all the housekeeping that we got for you right here, right now. So let's dive into spoilers. No pun intended by dive in.
Let's plummet to our deaths in spoilers.
Yeah. God, man, this podcast sure has been a shipwreck. Fun stuff. Melissa, where do you want to start with this one?
I want to talk. I want to talk about the weird emotional reaction I had to this movie watching all of it in my adult life. Okay. This is a movie that there's a lot to think about when you watch it. There's just purely the movie itself, everything you see on screen. There's the true historical tale, and then there's like the craftsmanship and the performance and the technicality and all the work that went into making the thing. So you're thinking about the movie, the behind the scenes documentary, and the historical documentary of the thing, like in 3 layers all on top of each other at once while you're watching this.
Yeah.
And it is like almost overwhelming. I watched this movie, and after that I Googled, why is nature cruel? Because I was so upset that like the iceberg didn't have the manners to just like politely step out of the way of the ship. The water didn't think about, gee, there's a lot of people in me. Maybe I could be a little warmer. I'm like, why did all this stuff happen? Why did everyone have to die? It bothered me so much. And I know it's like the silliest stuff. This happened 110 years ago. Yes, I know that an ocean isn't sentient and it won't like lift you up like the water in Moana. I know that, but I was still like overcome with emotions. And I'm Googling, why did this happen? And then the next day I felt bad again. Like I was too involved thinking about the literal deaths, and it's like, you didn't pay enough attention to the filmmaking. It was like I feel like my brain doesn't have enough room to hold all of the things that this movie is, and I'm like paying disrespects to somebody if I think about another part too much. This is a movie like I know I'm going to need to rewatch, and I want to rewatch because there is a lot there to see and to appreciate, but like it's a movie that makes me wonder, is there a correct way to watch Titanic? I know there's no wrong way to eat a Reese's, but like, how do I Titanic? How do any of us Titanic?
Interesting. Funny enough, that sounds exactly like something you would do. You are absolutely the kind of person to see some tragedy in the world and just be like, how can I help? Like, what can I do? So yeah, you being like, why is nature cruel? It's like, that is absolutely Melissa. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like if I was a history buff and knew more about the actual like true life historical events here, I would want to go back and watch this to see what details I missed or what they included in there that maybe isn't like a part of the plot, but is just shown or is depicted and not mentioned, right? Like that is the stuff that I would like to know more of. But just as someone who is unaware of a lot of that, besides the Cliff Notes version of like, well, didn't end too well. I enjoyed the film a lot. I think it is a huge spectacle to watch. There's so much to look at, to see. There's so much happening on the ship at all times. But it is one that I think you're also still just meant to sit back and enjoy. Like you're like despite the tragedy, like there is just a lot of fun to be had, like watching this thing.
You can take it at any level you want. If you want the shallowest film viewing experience, or if you want the deepest film viewing experience, either tip of the iceberg, the film has it for you. I do really like that it is a movie that can be approached in different ways. It's got a versatility to it in that regard, that it can mean so many things to different people. It is admirable. And to talk about, I mean, I'm just doing a cursory look over the trivia page on IMDb, and there is some incredible like historical stuff that is shown but never specifically told to you. Like towards the end of the movie, when the water is flooding into the ship and you see various people who know they're not going to make it out, there's an older couple who are both holding each other in bed. The elderly couple seen hugging on the bed while water floods their room were the owners of Macy's department store in New York, Rosalie Ida Strauss and Isidore Strauss, both of whom died on the Titanic. Like nothing tells you, oh, here's this, like in the way that this film has a lot of dramatic irony to it. Like Picasso, he's never going to make anything of himself.
Right. Yeah.
There's no like historical irony with, you see that couple? I heard they own some big department store in New York City. I don't know if that's going to take off. Like they don't tell you. Like it's not a historical in-joke. It's not like some egg-headed, hey, did you know? It's just this really beautiful emotional moment between these two characters who I don't think if you do see them in crowd scenes up until then, they're never highlighted.
Right.
Like this, you just need that one shot of both of them on the bed. They don't need to be introduced. They don't need backstories. They don't need names. A single image is all of the emotion. It is everything you need for that moment to pay off and do what it needs to do. Yeah,
indeed. Like that is the kind of stuff that I'm sure there's a bunch of stuff like that in there that I just don't know, am unaware, wouldn't think of if I like didn't have some hint or clue that I should be paying attention to this. Like, hey, go look this couple up online. There's more to learn about them, right?
Like Bill Paxton doesn't mention them in his like contemporary 1997 spiel of everything that happened to the Titanic. He's not like, and the founders of Macy's died there too.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that I think is one of the incredible things about this movie and why it's launched it into mega stardom, right? Like this is, because we kind of jokingly called this the god, as much as we could, right? The
godmother.
The godmother, the Godfather, but for women. What is the chick flick equivalent? And like that is the thing. Like stereotypically, I'm not really as interested in this movie, but there's something about it that made this just inherently much more fascinating or much more interesting to me watching it for the first time than The Godfather when we watched those last week. It's just it's something to do with the spectacle. It's something to do with just like I can't quite put my finger on it, but at every moment in Titanic, there's always something.
Yeah.
And it's just like, this is fascinating. Like, I need to watch this.
It is a wholly unique moment in human history, recreated through another wholly unique moment in human history.
Yeah. So I want to talk about the sinking itself.
Yeah.
This is something that I feel like I was told once before, forgot it, and then as it happened and I was watching the movie, I feel like it's that, like, I had a vague memory that I think someone told me that the ship actually sinking is like half of the movie, which you would kind of think maybe like the last third, it's the last act and the ship sink, right? But like, it's the entire second half of the movie, not just like the last half an hour. And that was fascinating to me, is that it takes so long for it to sink, but it is just chaos the entire time. But then again, it's only an hour and a half. It's not that long at all, right? But it's still just like, this is it seems like it goes on forever, but it also seems like it happens so fast, and it's just chaos the entire time, and it's wild.
The wildest part about this to me is how fast the ship sunk in real life. It's such a large portion of the movie. It seems very long in the movie, but compared to living human time, it's so long. Another one of these IMDb facts is the scene set in 1912, i.e. the whole movie except for the present day scenes and the opening and ending credits, have a total length of 2 hours and 40 minutes, the exact time it took for the Titanic to sink. God, also, the collision with the iceberg reportedly lasted 37 seconds, which is how long the collision scene is in the movie. The fact that you went from safety to death in real life in less time than it takes to watch this actual movie.
Right. Yeah.
That boggles my mind. And I read another one of these facts. This is truly chilling. Let me find this, because this sent such a chill down my spine. James Cameron went on 12 dives to the real Titanic himself and found it an overwhelming emotional experience to actually see the sunken ship. During his first trip, he was so goal-oriented that he managed to film the shots he wanted. But as soon as he was back on the surface, he broke down in tears after finally realizing the magnitude of the historic tragedy he had just witnessed. He ended up spending more time with the Titanic than the living passengers did.
Interesting.
Like, for such a long movie where the sinking scenes are so much of the movie, it gives you this weird time dilation effect. And then you read about the fact that, like, the Titanic only got to be the Titanic for, 2 days?
Right. Yeah. That's wild to think about. Goodness. But
if there was a Titanic fan convention over a weekend in an airport Marriott, that is longer than the time the Titanic lived.
So wild. That's what's fascinating to me is like in like typical movie structure, you would think the sinking would happen faster, or it would be it'd be the last third, but it does take up half of the film there, which makes it seem long for movie standards, for movie structures. But yeah, to then realize, well, it actually happened, like the actual sinking was the length of the entire movie. Wild. Like that's so, like, God, that's so scary though. But yeah, I was curious if it was filmed in a kind of like real time, like ish, which I guess is not exactly true, but yeah, just like as I was watching it, that was one of the thoughts going through my head of like, this probably would have happened really fast, especially when they're giving that like computerized like demonstration of like, here's what happened. It went up, and because it went up, that part was too heavy and it split, and then that launched it back up as it sank down.
Like,
and
when you picture a shipwreck, when you picture a ship sinking from like other movies or whatever, it's like there's a hole in the bottom and it just descends horizontally, like it sinks, purely sinks. This not only sinks, it tilts. So you are not only fighting against water and cold and lack of power, you are fighting against gravity.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah. Man, I had a blast watching all of these, like the chaos of the ship sinking, because that's exactly what it is. No one knows what's happening. No one knows if this is something we can fix. Is this something we can just block off and like work on it as we continue our journey? Is this something like we can get help and another boat will be nearby? Do we need to exit the ship? Like what's happened? And everyone is at all different places with this, and it like that is partly one of the things that's fascinating. Then like as it slowly becomes more and more apparent to more people, you just start to see things descend into madness and chaos, and just the weird, like almost liminal spaces of the interior of the ship as it's starting to flood, and people are like screaming for help, but there's no one in that level.
Yes.
And like maybe one person will run by, but they're so panic stricken and so like into their own thing that they like you almost don't exist to them. That stuff is wild. Just to know that at one point Jack is down there tied up to the like he has the handcuffs, just screaming. No one is near him at all, right? And it just thankfully he had been flirting with this one girl who's like, I should go check on him, right? Like, I need to go find this hot guy. Where is he?
Right.
But then even like when she's down there trying to help him and doesn't know what to do, doesn't know how to, like she starts being like, hey, help, what, hey, someone, anyone, right? And there's no one. And it's kind of weird to be like, you're on a ship, like you would think there'd be someone. they're
so eerie
up, right? Yeah, but it's so scary that it's just empty.
This movie does do a lot with the management of the crowd and where the crowd is or isn't at any given moment. Because the scenes of like of Rose like running through the hallways, sloshing through the hallways, and she gets the axe. There's nobody around her. She's going up levels and turning corners. She's entirely alone, and maybe like one terrified person runs past her and treats her like she's a piece of furniture. Like she's not another person. They're so focused on their own personhood and their own survival.
Yeah.
And one of the scariest like little tableaus in the movie to me is when they're loading the lifeboats. They're like loading them, like pulling the pulleys, reeling them down into the ocean, and they like have to like they haven't put the first one down fast enough, and they're sending another one down after it. And it's all the people in the first boat who are trying to like, push it back up. Like, no, you're going to crush us. Like, that's also a threat. There's the threat of emptiness and the threat of overcrowding, and just what the movie does with space is very effective.
Yeah.
This is such a scary movie. I wouldn't classify it as a horror movie. Maybe in one like very, very specific.
Maybe 9-year-old Melissa would classify it as a horror movie.
It's not a horror movie in the traditional sense, but this movie has more fear and terror and chills and like things that will stick with you way more than like Like, I don't remember what happens in The Exorcist, but like that boat almost being crushed by the other boat, like I'll remember that 10 years from now.
Yeah. That was a scary scene for sure. I think to me also just it's you mentioned the use of space and where people are and where the crowd is. I think another detail to me that was also scary is when they realized that some of these boats, these lifeboats, are being just packed full, and then there's like 3 people in the boat, and they just happen to get out there, and they're just like, what are you fucking doing? Like, why?
Yeah.
Like, you can't just let 3 people go in a boat. You can fit 70 in there.
12.
Sure, but like I'm exaggerating.
Better, but
still, like that is the idea that it's not just space, but it's the selfishness of people once that happens, right? In both ways too, because there is also this scene where there's that one guy who's trying to save Rose, who doesn't even speak the same language, right? And is just dragging her along, and she has to punch him to stop, and I'm trying
I have to
do
go
something.
back. Yeah,
I have a mission. I'm asking you for help, and you're just ignoring me.
Well,
but it is this weird chivalrous selfishness of you're a woman, I need to save you. You're helpless.
Yes. It's like you said, that might have been somebody who doesn't understand English, doesn't know what she's saying, and there is. In the third act of this movie, with all the lifeboat loading, it is a mix of selfishness or carelessness of, we'll load 12 millionaires on this boat and then let it float away, even though it could take 40 more people. But also just a lack of information. It's established early on when Rose is talking to the architect, to Victor Garber. And she realizes there is not enough lifeboats. I'm looking at the lifeboats. I've seen how many there are. I can estimate the capacity. I was told how many people are on the ship. And she's like, that's not enough, right? And he's like, yeah, that's not enough. But they told
less
me
than half.
Too many lifeboats will make it cluttered. The audience knows that. The protagonist knows that. But we have no proof that just all these crewmen know that. They may not know we have to load the boats to capacity, and even then we're getting half the people off the ship. They may think there's room for everyone. We don't know if they've done that math also. So it is this terrible mix of carelessness and just dramatic irony of, oh no, they don't know what I know.
Yeah. On top of that, where the next nearest ship is, assuming the ship is sinking, okay, well then they've called for help. Someone will be here soon, right? And we know the next ship isn't going to be there for 4 hours, which when I think the response when you first hear that is, oh, that's not that bad. 4 hours, right? Shouldn't be that bad. But then, you're like, but wait, they're by an iceberg. The water is freezing cold. Yeah. It's the middle of the night. It's dark. The chaos of people just trying to survive and be selfish and do all of that and get their own, and the families being separated in the midst of that, provides a real danger where boats are being broken. Even the lifeboats are being thrown around and tossed around in a way that is this is destructive and is going to kill more people than if we were all just single filed, if we all remained calm, probably would have been better. I can't say for sure, but there's an extra layer of just it should have been it should have been fine. 4 hours isn't that, but man, there's just small details that not everyone knows or thinks about that is just oh, but that's an added layer. Oh, but they didn't know this. Oh, but that, right?
Yeah. There's so much to worry about. It's just this Swiss cheese effect of you have a stack of Swiss cheese slices and all the holes are lining up in one space and you can see straight through the cheese block and it's like that. There's so many bad things layered on top of each other. And it's so hard to know what is the correct thing to do? Like, there are ships, there are rescue boats that are rightfully chastised for not going back when they have room, but some of them are pretty much close to capacity. And I think somebody says if we go towards the survivors, they will swarm us. They will all try and clamor on this boat. They will overtake us, and then our rescue boat will sink. So there's people who, like, if they try and save other people, if they try and save the people off of their boat, they are putting everybody on their boat in danger also, potentially. And it's, do you risk that? Could all of us die if we try that? Are we going to save 5 more people who we can fit on here? Or is this boat of like 60 of us just going to stay put?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, there's no best practices for anybody to follow.
There's also just like, it's the lack of communication in the midst of all of that. Because if one boat decides to go rescue, yes, that I think I would agree that is what would happen. The boat would get swarmed, and it would put everyone there at danger, and that's not a good thing. But if all the boats went at the same time, you could probably work it out, right? Like, there's probably something you could do. But that's the thing, is that those boats can't really communicate to one another because they've it's just,
it's 1912. You don't have a walkie-talkie. Maybe you've got a bullhorn or something, but who knows how far away the rescue boats are from each other. And maybe one crewman's yelling to another crewman on the boat, but there's so much death screaming that you can't hear each other.
Exactly.
Like, once the ship starts to sink, there is no win condition. There is no best way out. Like, there's no way to get out of this without at least 50 people dying. Like, maybe you could have cut the death count in half, but still, there's unimaginable deaths even in the best case scenario for what happens here.
Yeah, that sucks. Of course, we have to shout out the band playing as the ship is sinking. I knew that was a thing. I've seen gifs that has been like one of the cultural osmosis things that I have absorbed. But yeah, it was still just neat to see this scene in its entirety, where they play and they stop. And they're like, all right, well, I think we should maybe focus on, saving ourselves. And then there's the one guy who just, he's like, all right, I'm like, there's no hope. And so he just starts playing again. Yeah. And one by one, the band starts to be like, I think he's right. And they all just start playing some more. And it's just like, fuck, man. Like,
the tragedy of the people who are fighting so hard to survive and sometimes being outright selfish, like the dozen people who take one boat for themselves or whatever. And that mixed with the people who just resign themselves like fairly early on to, I'm not getting out of this, am I? There's no chance for me. Or like, maybe there is a chance, but how could I prioritize myself over like all these women and children? Like the combination of people who are like, I'm destined to die, and other people who are fighting so hard against impending doom. Everybody's approach to the situation is different.
Wild stuff. You were about to go in a different direction here.
Let's talk about our leads. We've talked about the setting and the disaster plenty. What were your thoughts on Jack and Rose themselves and their romance?
Good stuff. Jack, as a young artist with a lot of skill. Of course, he says they didn't like him in Old Paris. But I mean, he has incredible skill. He is the definition of a starving artist. It's interesting to see Leonardo DiCaprio go from the like young starving artist in Titanic to like where he is in The Great Gatsby, right? And just playing the exact opposite character.
Another movie where he is dramatically backlit by fireworks.
Exactly.
I love that one shot in The Great Gatsby, and I like never watched enough Titanic to know there's like a mirror to that shot in this movie.
Exactly. Yeah, like I really liked that scene there. I think that is another like layer to this
Mhm.
whole disaster that I don't think is necessary. Like they mention it a couple times, but is not necessarily made super clear in terms of how it affected the disaster.
Mm.
Is the classism
Mm.
that is in there. Like he is poor. He is not one of these like fancy rich people with all the
Mm.
money, all of that stuff. So yeah, when the lifeboats do need to be taken up and people put in there, there's just a very quick mention of like, oh no, we like these are the first class hates.
Yeah.
Like these are the like you can get the next one. But then it just moves on because there's so much chaos. But it was a fun time to see him at that dinner table, just completely being like, I know you all hate me, and I'm just gonna have some fun.
Right.
Right.
You all hate Kathy Bates too, but she still has fun.
Right. Yeah. And then
Kathy Bates.
go ahead.
No, I just wanted to take a sidebar on the Kathy Bates character, Molly Brown, who is a
Yeah.
real person.
Yep.
The unsinkable Molly Brown, who survived the Titanic and survived maybe like some other wild historical disaster. Like she had a lot of hardships in her life and she like managed her way through all of them. There's a musical movie based on her life, The Unsinkable Molly Brown, and I haven't seen the movie, but I've seen the stage musical before, and I loved the stage musical. It's so much fun. But I saw it in a local outdoor theater, and it started raining real hard right at the Titanic scene. So I've never seen the end of that story either.
That's funny.
But the actress like came out with an umbrella and she's like, well, I'm going to tell you guys what happens in the rest of the show, even if we do have to call it for rain.
That's funny. I could have sworn I saw something, yeah, that there were like maybe I was looking at an IMDb page or something. I don't remember what. But yeah, there is someone on the Titanic who had also survived 2 other shipwrecks. So it might be her.
I think there's a nurse.
Someone else.
I think there's a nurse on the Titanic. I watched an episode of Puppet History about her.
Interesting. Yeah, it was just some little small tidbit that I saw of just like, man, what terrible bad luck to be in 3 shipwrecks.
Was that just what the early 20th century was, just like a shipwreck every year?
I mean, kind of. I would assume, especially like she may have been a nurse, like in the Navy.
I think she was.
Did they accept women back then? I don't know when that happened.
Nurses, at least, yes.
Yeah. So yeah, to be like, I'm not sure the exact history on there. That's why I was like, I don't want to say this. I don't know. But. Yeah, like that, like especially if she was a nurse in the Navy or something, she would be on ships like that. And I think, yeah, at that time, like maybe they were experimenting with new materials or new ways to do these ships or something. Who knows? I don't know. But yeah, that is wild to me that there is all of these little smaller stories in there. That's just crazy to think about.
But to go back to Jack and Rose, there is such a strong classism theme throughout the movie. But I really appreciate like the first time they talk to each other after he's saved her from her suicide attempt, jumping off the back of the ship. She sees him the next day and she's like, oh, I bet. And she can tell he's of a lower class than she is. And she's like, I bet you're like, oh, look at this snobby, bratty, rich girl. What problem does she have in the world? And he's like, no, all I saw was somebody who was in trouble, who's very sad. And I just wondered what happened in her life to make her think that this was her only option. I really like that between these two characters, that we've got this lead who is very well aware of the class struggles, the things that he is struggling against, but has enough of that human empathy that when he sees Rose, he sees her as an individual and not as just a symbol of the rich.
Yeah. Yeah. something else that I really liked with that is after that dinner table scene, he's like, all right, you want to see a real party? And they go like in the interior of the ship and everyone is down there like singing and clapping and dancing and spinning around. And it is just like so much like people always think about these like lavish rich people parties that do all this stuff. But then, like you saw exactly what they do they sit around the table, they drink wine, they eat cheese, they talk about their business. It's just dead. It's soulless. It's lifeless. And then they go downstairs where these people are poorer. They don't have much. They might not have anything at all. But they're smiling, they're clapping, they're dancing, they're having so much fun. And like it is just this interesting like juxtaposition of these two parties. That was just like, this is a good scene. I like this. Like, this is fun.
You know what scene I knew because it's iconic, but I really enjoyed watching is the Draw Me Like One of Your French Girls scene. I never knew that was entirely Rose's idea. I thought maybe this was something Jack kind of like jokingly said, like, "Oh yeah, I used to draw a lot of you."
And at first she's like, "Oh no, I'm too."
Or that he would make a joke about it, like, "Oh, I used to draw a lot of life models. You're welcome to model for me if you want."
Sure, yeah.
No, she never, like, he tells her about his history, but he never tells her about it in regards to, would you like to do this? It's her idea. She's like, I want you to draw me like one of the French girls. I'm going to be completely nude. It's her idea. Like, she has so much agency in this romance that I really liked. I really admired that from her a lot. And I just thought it's a compelling romance. Like, even if it's become such a cliche 25 years later, like, you still enjoy it. And maybe it goes by so fast, and Jack is almost fantastically enamored with her. But I kind of like that it's this sort of daydream aimed at teenage girls. The girls of any age. Anyone of any age can have just this fantastical romance that they can just believe in against the backdrop of all this terrible historical tragedy.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure I saw that whole scene when I was a kid. I went back in my memory and it's like, I don't remember my mom like fast forwarding or saying like, kids, how about you go to the kitchen and we make some snacks? Like, I don't remember that, like, the scene being skipped over. I know I remember the hand in the steamy car. So
right.
Shout out to my mom for just letting the movie play out as regular, like, even though I was 8. I was a big art museum kid, though, so maybe she's like, well, she's seen nude paintings. This is just the behind the scenes of a nude painting.
It is like as much as much agency as she has in that whole thing. It's not inherently a sexual act, right? It is art, right? He is actually trying to draw her and do a good thing. It is not a pretense for them fucking, right?
It's not like he drew her and then drew an arrow and wrote, "This is where the dick goes." Like, it's just a beautiful drawing of her.
Right?
Very sincere, yes.
It's very sincere. He's actually trying to make a great sketch. And like she is actually trying to pose for him. She's never done it before. So she's like, hey, should my arm be up here? Like, what should I do here? Like, that is actually what happens in those things. But there is that flirty nature to it. Like, she knows that he has a thing for her, and she is kind of intrigued by him. And so for her to disrobe right in front of him and then make the comment like, oh, the artist blushes. and he's just like I'm gonna head down drawing, like don't worry about it.
It is foreplay, but it is not purely a pretense to further sexual acts.
Yes,
like
exactly.
it's both part of something and it stands on its own.
Yeah, like you can watch that scene by itself and be like, all right, yes, this is not sexual. Despite maybe one or two things that they hint at in their conversation. But yeah, like you can leave it at that and move on. And it is what it is.
And I love that 100-year-old Rose is like, yeah, wasn't I a dish? Like, she's so proud of that drawing of herself.
She is,
no regrets from old Rose.
That was also one of the things I've seen that gif of it's been 84 years. I've seen that everywhere. I had no idea that was from Titanic.
Yeah, it's I do remember that from like Tumblr in the early 2010s being like waiting for the next season of Sherlock.
In 84 years.
I need to talk about the infamous door scene and how there's the cultural thinking about this scene is the movie acts like there's no room on the door, but really there is room on the door. Like I saw some image that was going around the internet again in like 2012, 2013 that was these college kids who watched the movie and like did like a model of the door as like close to the real scale as they could get it based on watching the movie. And they had like these two figures. They're like, okay, you're approximately Kate Winslet's size. You're approximately Leonardo DiCaprio's size. And it was just like a multi-panel image of every different pose and configuration they could have both laying on the door.
Yeah.
But I think there was some retort to that was, it's not a question of the space on the door. It's a question of how much weight the door can have. Like it can't hold the weight of both of them at once. But then there's the question of why don't they just switch off? All right, Rose gets 30 minutes on the door, Jack gets 30 minutes on the door. Like they theoretically could, but also you look at Jack and just his whole heart being given to Rose in this movie, and like he would never accept that. If she like jumped into the water and tried to like push him up on the door, like he wouldn't do it. He's prioritized her throughout the entire story. Like there's unless that door did have enough weight for two of them, Jack's dying. Jack has already made his peace with I am dying, so that this girl who came so close to death, who has had such a bad life and who deserves so much better, can live. She needs to live over me. Like he's absolutely made his peace with that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting scene for sure, because there is this like, well, do they have to be completely on the door? Can they have their like feet in the water kicking around here?
Two dry torsos, two wet legs. What does that do for you?
Right. Yeah. That it's an interesting scene to think about, but it is also like they're in the midst of a bunch of other people, a bunch of other debris. Is there not something else that he can grab onto or it can hoist himself up on? I know not everyone out there has found something, but also people are dying around them, right? Like, hey, dead guy, Timmy, sorry, but you're dead.
Right. I used your corpse as a flotation device.
Yeah, that or just roll them off the door that they're on, and then you can get on the thing that they were on.
Yeah.
I would think if they were closer together, body next to body, there would be some like we can get more body heat to keep us warm. We don't have to be fully on this thing, but it's kind of a mystery, right? Of just like, we'll never know.
No, I don't think the Mythbusters did that one.
Mm-mm.
Another scene in the romance I want to talk about is it's like the afternoon before the crash. I think it's right before the "I'm flying Jack" scene that we all know. Where like she's walking along the decks with Billy Zane and he like pulls her away. I think she said like she doesn't want to see him again, or like she's been made to say she doesn't want to see him again. I forget how it goes, but like he pulls her into that weird old timey gym and he's telling her how much he cares about her and how remarkable she is. And he says, I just need to know that you're going to be okay. It's less of a run away with me scene and more of a, please don't marry that man if you really don't want to. I don't want you to do anything you feel like you have to do for somebody else's sake. Rose, please just be your own person, whether it's with me or without me. Like her well-being, separate from him, is his priority.
Yeah. Yeah, which makes for an interesting end to the movie when all the people get rescued and they're on land and they're taking stock of like, all right, what is your name? Like, so we can identify you all. And she has her hood up because she sees him walking around looking for her. And she's just like, I'm someone new. Like, that is such a harrowing experience, right? That it does change a person to have survived that, but then on top of that, to have experienced this flash of a romance, just this lightning strike, right? And it, like that can also change you. That can also change who you are, and that's essentially what she does. Is she takes his last name?
Yeah.
When they're like, all right, and who are you? And that's why, like. She was able to kind of hide for those 84 years, right? Because no one by that name was technically on the Titanic.
Yeah.
And then when she saw her nude picture, she goes, "Oh, hey, well, that is me right here. Hand up. That is me. You can contact me. I'm right here. Art modeling sessions. High five. Right?
High five. Did you cry at any point in this movie? Did you get misty-eyed?
I did not.
Oh, stone cold. Yeah.
I saved all my tears for Lost this weekend.
I believe that.
That's
what you need to cry at. That's correct.
I cried so much at the end of that.
I didn't wind up really being. I was emotional in different ways. Watching this movie. Like I said, I had to worry about the cruelty of nature, the deaths of dozens of people, the hard living that all the performers had to go through. My brain was like too crowded. The only time I got teary-eyed was at the beginning with Bill Paxton, because I'm like, oh man, Bill Paxton's dead in real life.
Right? Yeah.
Bill Paxton, 3-timer, review show 3-timer.
There you go.
We've seen Aliens. We watched Twister earlier this year, and now this.
Sure did.
It's really interesting to watch this, like, not too far from when we watched Twister. Because as soon as we see his buddy, his, like, long-haired buddy on the diving ship, I'm like, okay, he's the Philip Seymour Hoffman of this group. I understand.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, I don't know if I have much more to say on Titanic. An interesting thing to me about both this film and The Godfather, there's very few times, but especially in ones like these, which are considered like just mega important films. They're super famous. They're classics. They're studied. They're dissected. They're all sorts of stuff. I sometimes feel nervous talking about them, just to be like, what am I gonna bring to the table about this? Like, what will I say that hasn't already been said, or something like that? And I just kind of have to get over that and just be like, well, I reacted to these things. These are the things that spoke to me. And so like, that's what I did. Those were the things that spoke to me in particular. That's not new. Who cares? This is how I reacted. So I feel like you had a good conversation.
Yeah, everyone's reactions are different, and it is interesting to not revisit totally, these pieces of like big cultural importance that we've seen in, like, we started watching the movie, we never finished it, or we've seen all the memes, I've seen clips from that. Somebody described it to me once, but I've never watched it directly.
Right.
To see what is this thing in its entirety, like within the context of seeing it completely and wholly for the first time in 2022. What is it? How does it play out? What does it remind us of? How has culture changed around it? What things have we seen other movies do again and maybe do better, or what things from this older piece of art still really hold up? Like, there's, like I said, there's nothing. I've never seen anything that's quite like Titanic. I don't know if we ever will.
Exactly.
We've seen things on similar large scales, of similar levels of technical impression, you know, of just dazzling jumps forward in technology and of the craftsmanship and the hard work that goes into it. But nothing quite like this. I've never seen Avatar. That's a movie, right? It's a movie that, like, everybody says is just middling, but everybody says that because they've seen it. Like, even if nobody likes it that much, we've all seen it, but I haven't seen it, and I don't care if I like it that much or not. I just want it off the list. I want to have seen it, because at the very least, I'm going to get just looking at it and knowing I am seeing that is also on its own, like, completely unique. Nobody's ever done anything like this. Nobody else is doing anything quite like this. Like, this is another wild James Cameron pet project that he's just throwing everything into.
Yeah.
And even if people might roll their eyes at the story, as a technical piece of work, it's outstanding. And I look forward to seeing it. And I also thought it was a good time to watch Titanic this year, since we're getting James Cameron's return to directing, since he made Avatar in, like, 2009. And he's finally doing Avatar 2, The Way of Water, his next wettest film.
Yeah, there you go. I am not a huge fan of Avatar, but you're right. He did make a brand new method of 3D, of filming things in 3D specifically for that film, and it's been used a number of times since then. It's been mimicked and stuff like that, but man, James Cameron absolutely loves that film. Like, he will not shut up about that film and how great he thinks it is, which is kind of funny to me, but oh well. Cool, good stuff. Do you have any kind of final thoughts on Titanic, or should we move on to bingo?
No, I enjoyed it. If you've been in the same boat as me, where, like, you've never seen all of it, or you didn't know if it was for you, give it a shot. Like, I think everybody can find some angle on Titanic that is really compelling to them. Yeah.
Indeed, go check it out if you have not already. It is a classic for a reason. Even if you don't think you might be into this kind of romance, I don't want to say chick flick, because at the end of the day, I don't think this is a chick flick, but just maybe more stereotypically not a guy film by
I think it's a movie
binary standards.
Yeah, that could appeal to a lot of people and has a lot of empathy in it. It is perhaps one of our finest human flicks.
Yes,
for humans.
Go check it out. Human flicks, movies for humans are like human movies.
Yeah.
With that being said, I think it is about time for us to check in on bingo. Review show bingo, movie trope bingo, all that good stuff. Let me pull it up on screen. We did not have a ship AI. Dude, imagine a remake of Titanic, but it's like a spaceship, like out in space. Like, that is the conceit there. That'd
Kyle,
be interesting.
That is an episode of Futurama.
Really?
Yes.
See, I didn't know that, but yeah, there you go. It's already been done. If you can think it, it's already been done. Who did the score for this? Was it Hans Zimmer?
I believe it was James Horner.
Okay, then I would. That's like,
Kyle,
I have Hans Zimmer score on this, and
you got to do a week of pitches that are just movies that Hans Zimmer has scored. I will let you like blatantly knock that off your bingo sheet because he's done such a variety of films. You could pick three
so funny to me.
Different films.
It's so funny to me because that is why I put this as a trope. Is he's done so much. He has such a wide, large body of work that I was like, Hans Zimmer score. We'll get that.
Yeah.
This is our like second year doing the review show bingo. I know last year we only started it like halfway in the year, but this is our second year and I still haven't gotten Hans Zimmer score on anything that we've watched yet. So I who knows, maybe that one is not as surefire of a thing that I thought. But yeah, I don't think we have any kind of update for review show bingo. Expository art? No, I don't think so. Okay,
not in the way I've been looking for it. That's a very abstract one I've been trying to prove to myself, and I haven't managed to do it this year.
Yeah, disappointing for that, but that is our check-in on review show bingo. That being said, let's do recommendations.
Yes.
Melissa, if people liked this film, what else might they like?
I already mentioned The Great Gatsby, one of my faves. I haven't seen Unsinkable Molly Brown, the movie, but if you find that stage show being produced live in your area, seek it out. I had a lot of fun watching most of it.
Yeah.
Hopefully it won't rain where you are and you can see the end. Whatever that episode of Futurama is, I haven't seen it in a long time. I don't remember what it's called or where it is in the series, but there is one of those. I would recommend two YouTube channels. Oh, I mentioned Puppet History earlier. Puppet History is a series on the YouTube channel Watcher. This is from Ryan Bergara and Shane Madej from like the BuzzFeed Unsolved videos.
Sure.
They've got their own channel and they have this show called Puppet History where like a little puppet called the Professor. Shane does a puppet show that like tells you a historical lesson. And like it's him and he's got like Ryan and like another guest there as like the students and they have to answer these pop quizzes. They're like half-hour long videos. Each one's on a different topic. There is one about this nurse who like survived the sinking of the Titanic and like a couple other ships. A really wild tale.
Yeah.
Puppet History is a lot. Like you really do learn something and it's really fun. And the puppetry is very impressive. They make puppets for like so many like inert objects. Like I just watched one about Musashi Miyamoto, the samurai, and how he was being rowed to an island for a duel. And on the trip there, he took one of the oars and like fashioned it into a new sword hilt. So they made a puppet out of the oar that like talks to you about how it like lost its brother.
That's so funny.
Very ingenious.
Good stuff.
But there's a channel called Bright Sun Films. And their main show is called Abandoned. And it's just these mini docs about things that have been abandoned, like theme park rides, stadiums, dead retail. Like the latest episode they put out is about Fry's Electronics. And now after that bankruptcy, there's so many of those buildings sitting around abandoned. And there's sometimes the show will cover shipwrecks. And there are a couple really well done, fascinating looks at shipwrecks, like shipwrecks that have happened in like the last several decades, like post-Titanic shipwrecks, like the one about like the Costa Concordia, which is about some shipwreck, some like cruise ship from like Italy that smashed in, I don't know, but sometime in our lifetime. These looks at like in our lifetime semi-Titanic events. Really interesting.
That's cool.
Really, really dark material, but fascinating approach. And there's another YouTube channel called Fascinating Horror. Fascinating Horror. That's also these mini docs about horrific historical events. I don't know if they've literally done the Titanic, but they've probably done many things like the Titanic. And this is a channel I was subscribed to for a little while, but then it was like, I can't be tempted by these. These are too harrowing. I gotta unsubscribe. Like, I can't watch that much of this channel, but I really admire what it does. Really smart breakdowns of like what went wrong in these various situations. It lays everything out for you really clearly. You really understand the process of how things happened. And there's always a part at the end of the video where they talk about, okay, after this happened, this is what changed. These are the precautions that were then put in place to make sure things like that didn't happen again.
Yeah.
So it's very dark subject matter, but there is some level of reassurance in the video also. So those are different YouTube channels you can go to learn.
Good stuff. I have a few things. The first one I will say is Dunkirk, the movie Dunkirk.
Oh, yeah.
It is a World War II, World War II, right? Yeah. Movie. But if you did not like the ending of Titanic, where the boats did not come to rescue people, this one might lift your spirits a little bit at the end there. But it is a harrowing tale of people kind of just trapped, just waiting for help, just waiting for rescue. And it I mean, not to really spoil it, but it was a historical event. That help did come, that rescue did come. But it's kind of told in like 3 or so different stories, different people kind of experiencing that event from different perspectives. And yeah, it's a really, really interesting tale for sure.
Did you know that one of the Titanic crew officers in this movie was based on a real person, and that real person is also represented in Dunkirk?
Oh, wow. I did not know that.
I forget which guy he is that you see around on the Titanic. There's the guy with the gun, Reed Richards, and then I don't know any of the other ones.
Right, yeah.
They all kind of blend together. But according to IMDb, during World War I, Titanic's former second officer, Charles Herbert Lightoller, served in the Royal Navy Reserve in multiple vessels. Despite his distinguished record, he would never command a merchant vessel for White Star or any other shipping line. After leaving merchant service, he owned a small motor yacht for much of the rest of his life. He was one of the many private citizens who helped in the evacuation of British and Allied forces from Dunkirk, France.
Yeah.
He and his 2 sons would be credited for evacuating approximately 130 Allied personnel in the dangerously overloaded vessel.
Interesting. Good stuff. I wonder then if that is like the main, because there is one of these stories in Dunkirk that is like
might be
about
him.
I
think he's Mark Rylance.
Guy that they focus on. It's him and his son, and then it's I don't remember the actor's name. The guy who was in Eternals.
Cillian Murphy.
No, not Cillian Murphy. He was in Eternals. He also plays the Joker in the new Batman.
Barry Keoghan.
Yes. He's in that. He kind of stows away on the ship with them there. Okay. I'm wondering if that's his character then. I could be wrong, but still interesting.
I have seen Dunkirk, and a lot of it is a blur for me. This is one of the movies like Jack and I would watch together in quarantine, just like starting it at the same time and texting each other. And I'd look down at my phone and I'd text her, and I'd look back up and I would be like in a completely different place in time. So like I gave up on trying to follow that movie. It demanded my full attention, and I was not able to give it that night.
It follows multiple characters, and they're each in a completely different space. Like one is an Air Force pilot that is doing stuff. One is that private citizen responding. One is like a soldier who's trapped behind the lines there. So there are like you can like look down and then look up, and you're in a completely like different story, and it's just like, what is happening? But it is a fantastic film. I liked it a lot. On top of that, you can also, again, the same Barry. What was his name again?
Keoghan. There's a G in it, but I don't know if you pronounce the G.
Keoghan?
It may be Keoghan. It's one of those two, I think.
Something like that. Yeah, he's also in Chernobyl for a brief second.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, not a main character, but he is in it. And yeah, go watch Chernobyl. This is another disaster story, 6-episode mini-series. Absolutely fascinating to watch. just how everything goes wrong, and no one wants to believe that things are going wrong. It is not for the faint of heart to watch. It is harrowing. It is dark. It is, but man, it is like you just cannot stop while watching. It is just riveting. I would highly recommend that. On the more sort of fantastical side, back on number 73 here on the Whatnots review show, we covered season 1 of The Terror,
Yes.
which is a fantastical adaptation. That's not the right word. A fantastical take on historical events.
Yes. It is historical horror fiction, speculative historical fiction.
Yeah, this was a show that was on AMC. Each season was a different kind of situation. It's like an anthology in that sense. But it's about a ship in the late in the mid 1800s that is trying to sail through Arctic Canada. And in this show, they get stuck. And they are stuck out there in the ice and have to survive. And they are slowly freezing. Their food is gone. In the show, there is a monster hunting them, and then they turn to cannibalism. So it is a wild show, but that is more so on the fantastical side of things. But that too, just if another shipwreck disaster thing.
But the monster stalking them is a more minor element compared to just food, resources, and crew fighting. It is much more of a historical drama than it is a monster horror tale.
Exactly. So yeah, I would say go check those things out. Those would be my recommendations.
Good recommendations.
Oh yeah. Okay. Pitches for this next week. I have 3 comics for us to read. We do comics often here on the show, but I've noticed recently we do movies or TV shows back to back more often than we do like comics back to back. Our comics are more spread out. So you know what? We're doing a comic at the end of the month.
We haven't done one in a little while.
I was just like, you know what? Let's just sneak another one in there. So I have 3 indie comics that are all available on Comixology Unlimited for you all to read. My pitch is that we would read the first 2 volumes of each of these, so it should be a real quick one. Pitch number 1 is entitled 7 Secrets. This is by Tom Taylor and Danielle D. Nicuolo, I believe. Nicuolo. It says, for centuries, the Order has trusted keepers and holders to guard the secrets in 7 briefcases against all harm. But when their stronghold is attacked and the secrets put in peril, the entire order must face their greatest fear, an enemy who knows too much and is willing to kill to get what he wants. Now, the Order's newest member, Casper, must discover the truth of the secrets before the enemy does, or risk losing everything. Kind of seems like a mix between like a spy thriller, but with a more modern, younger, almost like superhero take on it.
Okay.
I don't think it's necessarily superheroes in this story, but instead of it being like Bond, James Bond, like instead of that like high society, it's maybe more like Kingsman, like younger kids that are so that's at least what it seems like. I have not read this book, but Tom Taylor, who writes this book, he is kind of one of the more recent superstars in comics.
Okay.
And I don't think we've really done much of his stuff here on the show. So
I don't think
Seven
I know
Secrets.
that name. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. 7 Secrets. That's pitch number 1. Pitch number 2 is entitled Once and Future. I believe I've pitched this once before on the show. The description says, the king is undead. Long live the king. When a group of nationalists use an ancient artifact to bring a villain from Arthurian myth back from the dead to gain power, ex-monster hunter Bridget McGuire escapes her retirement home and pulls her unsuspecting grandson Duncan, a museum curator, into a world of magic and mysticism to defeat a legendary threat. This is from writer Karen Gillan and Russ Manning and Dan Mora on art. Explore the mysteries of the past, the complicated truths of our history, and the power of family to save the day, especially if that family has secret bunkers of ancient weapons and decades of experience hunting the greatest monster in Britain's history. So there you go. And that is Once and Future. Pitch number 2. And then pitch number 3, a book that I know nothing about except for I've seen it and I know it exists, which is not much at all. This is a book called We Only Find Them When They're Dead.
Oh. And
this is a sci-fi story from Al Ewing, who I've read some of his stuff. He's an incredible writer. And art by Simone DeMeo. It says, the gods are always beautiful, and the gods are always dead. Captain Matlick and the crew of the spaceship, the Vihan 2, are in search of the only resources that matter, and can only be found by harvesting the giant corpses of alien gods that are found on the edge of human space. While other autopsy ships and explorers race to salvage the meat, minerals, and metal that sustain the human race, Malik sees an opportunity to finally break free from this system by being the first to find a living god. But Malik's obsession with the gods will push his crew into the darkest reaches of space, bringing them face to face with a threat unlike anything they've imagined, unless the rogue agent on their ship, on their trail, can stop them first. Not on their ship, but on their trail. Yeah, we only find them when they're dead is pitch number 3. So pitch number 1, 7 Secrets. Pitch number 2, Once and Future. And pitch number 3, we only find them when they're dead.
I Googled all 3 of these. They're all very cool looking. I love that the title pages for We Only Find Them When They're Dead are these huge block letters, and they like changed the like scope and the focus and the angle of them. I really like this text design. That's exciting.
It's cool.
I am going to go with Once and Future because this is a book that my older brother's really into. He's told me about it several times. It's been on my long list of things to get around to pitching to you. I just don't know comics as well. And I was like, maybe once I get 3 comics people have told me about, I'll pitch them to Kyle.
Good stuff. Once and Future. I have heard good things about this book. Karen Gillan is a fantastic writer. I believe currently writing the Eternals comics for Marvel, among other things. But yeah, I've heard good things. Don't know much about this book, so I'm excited to dive in and check it out. Like I said, if you guys have a subscription to Comixology Unlimited, you guys can check this out. I believe if you also have a Kindle unlimited subscription or whatever their subscription thing is. You can also check this book out on that as well. So yeah, there you go. That's what we shall do. Volumes 1 and 2 of Once and Future. That said, let me pull up the calendar because the week after that is when we do the first bit of Kaiju Max, which is also a comic, a prison story, but with a bunch of kaiju as the prisoners. So that'll be an interesting one for sure. But yeah, I believe that about wraps us up this week for the Whatnots Review Show number 222. Melissa, where can the people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Wilkywit. That's WILKYWIT. And listen to my other podcast, Saturday Morning Obscurities. This is a show where me and my brother Jams talk about weird old kids shows you feel like only you remember.
There you go. And if you guys want to follow me, you can find me on Twitter at YoKyleSpringer. And of course, if you want to stay up to date with all of the stuff that we do here at The Whatnots, we are at The Whatnots on Twitter. So please go like, share, and subscribe. That would help us out a ton. Go check out one of our other videos right over there. That would help us out a ton. And yeah, you will be back next week for Once and Future, volumes 1 and 2. That being said, we will see you all next time. Bye.
Bye.